Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via Livestream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbprou.com.
Welcome to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. This is Andrew Frazier, your host, and excited to be here with you once again on Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Leadership Live at 8:05. We broke our first year, so we've done more than a year of every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. So we appreciate the support of our guests as well as our audience. Like always, we invite you to ask questions. Feel free to put things in the chat. Let us know if you like what you're hearing about. Each week we have a great guest, and this week is no exception. I'm excited to have John Webb as our guest. He's CEO and managing partner of Quantum Reach, but he's also an executive at a major corporation. And, more and more, most jobs are becoming more and more entrepreneurial. So, definitely having that entrepreneurial knowledge and expertise and way of thinking is key in what he does and everything he does. So, spent some time with John Webb over the years and got actually been a featured guest speaker at the Power Breakfast. And I think he's he's one of two featured guest speakers that has been a guest speaker more than once at the Power Breakfast over the last 10 years. So, like to introduce John, say a little bit about him, but I can't really say everything, so I'm going to invite him on in a sec. But one thing I always enjoy is John's from out of town, so when he comes in, we have breakfast a lot, and we go to a place where in New York City where the service tends to not be real great, but that's part of the fun. I'm sure if you've been in Boston and you go to No Name Seafood, that's a restaurant where I guess people go there to be treated badly by their servers. So, we do a little bit of that in New York as well. So let me invite John. He's done some great things for businesses, for corporations, and I've learned a lot from him, and I'm sure you will too. Hey, John, how you doing?
Good evening, Andrew. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on Leadership Live and share some of your expertise and knowledge, with the audience. Definitely we're going to talk about business strategies for long-term growth, but that encompasses a lot of things. So we're going to cover a lot of topics and really share some great insights. But before we do that, I know who you are. But not everybody knows who you are. And plus, it's always interesting with this because, I may know the guests, but I always learn things about the guests. A few months back, one of my guests, I didn't realize, but he had a horse farm. and he was there and helped give birth to over 100 horses. So, definitely everybody does different things of interest. So, so tell us a little bit about, where you're from, how you got to where you are, and, really what you've learned, some of what you've learned along the journey.
Okay. Sure. I'd be happy to kind of give the Reader's Digest version of me. Like most people, my path has not been a straight one, but mine is probably a little bit more untraditional than many others. First, foremost, as he mentioned, we had breakfast in New York a lot of times. Well, that's kind of like homecoming for me. I'm originally from New York, was born in Brooklyn, New York. Then decided to go to college outside of the state of New York. Thought that'd be beneficial for me just to see the world a little bit. So I ended up going to school in the Midwest, Michigan State to be exact. So I don't know if there's any Big Ten fans out there, but I'm a true Spartan, and studied mechanical engineering. And when I came out of school at that time, things were booming. So being an engineer was a good place to be. So I had offers to go anywhere I wanted in the country. My first thought was to come back to New York, but lo and behold, at that time, I got an offer from Rockwell International, and Rockwell at that time was the prime contractor for the space shuttle program. And so I thought that was a chance of a lifetime. Plus, they offered me to work on the shuttle main engines, the engines that go in the aircraft itself, in Los Angeles. So rather than go to New York, I thought I could go to a warmer New York and go in LA. And so I packed my bags, went to LA, didn't know a soul, got out there, loved working on the shuttle program. But a few years into it, what I realized was I liked understanding technical things, but I didn't feel the need to do them every day. So when it came time to go to grad school, as opposed to getting an MS in engineering, which I thought I would get pigeonholed, I decided to get an MBA. And so I went to school at Pepperdine, which is right there in Los Angeles, great business school in Malibu overlooking the ocean, probably one of the most beautiful campuses you'll ever see. A very distracting place to go to school, I might add. And when I graduated from Pepperdine, Rockwell saw fit to move me into marketing. But unfortunately, marketing at a company like Rockwell, because most of their customers are governmental agencies, is government contracting. And it wasn't the free enterprise system I was looking to be involved in. So while I was in grad school, I met a guy who was in the healthcare industry. And he, after working on me for a couple of years, convinced me that I should at least explore it, and I could always go back to aerospace if I didn't like it. And so I decided to take the chance and move on, and I went to healthcare, and I never looked back. And so from there, as Andrew mentioned, I've been involved in a lot of jobs, corporate jobs. So I ran local sales offices, then regional offices, then had national responsibility. In total, my journey has taken me to 9 states, including where I am today, and Canada. So I'm pretty well traveled. Some might say I'm one step ahead of the law, but it's been an interesting journey. In Canada, I ran a subsidiary of a U.S. company for 5 years based in Toronto. I probably know Canada better than most Canadians because you pick a hockey team city in Canada, we had offices there, and I visited quite frequently. So as I said, I ran divisions. Then I changed companies. Then once again, started running divisions for that company. And my last stop, and this was a few years back, at this particular company, I had what was called the growth division. So my job was to actually help start new businesses from the core competencies of the company, or scour the earth, find small businesses that we could bring in, scale up, and rebrand. And we did that quite successfully. But in 2009, when the downturn hit, the company I was with said, you know what, we're not in the growth business anymore. We're in the survival business. And in being in the survival business, not only did they want to stand pat with what we had done, they decided maybe we should dismantle it. And so at that point, I realized that my thoughts of what the future would hold and theirs were totally different. And therefore, it made sense for me to perhaps to seek my fortune elsewhere. And so I decided to jump the fence. Since I was doing venture capital work within the confines of a big company, I said that maybe I can do it outside. So I left and started a company called Quantum Reach, which I still have today. And with Quantum Reach, I was able to focus probably 70% on healthcare, but early stage companies that were trying to get started. So help with fundraising, help with the strategy, help coach along, and then also involved with some retail, some sports, in other endeavors. Even got involved with a lingerie company at one point. So, never say never. So for me, that was great. And then I kind of come full circle because about a year ago, I kept getting the calls from the corporate world, and I had a company, Cigna, which is it's a Fortune 15 company, one of the largest healthcare companies in the country. It's a global company, and they were starting a new region, and they asked me to help them start this region. And because of the entrepreneurial nature of it, and because they wanted things done differently, it seemed like it made sense. And so I am now running, I'm the market president for what they'll call the Tri-South region for Cigna. But I still have my entrepreneurial roots. I still stay involved. I'm still on different boards. I'm still very active in the venture world. And hopefully that'll give you a good overview of and hopefully maybe Andrew even learned something in that one.
Excellent. No, thanks for talking through it. Yeah, there were a few things I wasn't fully aware of, so definitely learned a little bit. And what you've done is extensive, and you really are a rocket scientist. So I've got a rocket scientist on the show, so that's pretty impressive.
I'm one of the few people where you run to when you were working in the space shuttle. If you ran into a problem, it was rocket science, and you could say that it was.
Yes. So excellent. So today we're really going to talk about success and using strategy to create the success that you're seeking over the long term so that you can grow. So John's worked with a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, and has successfully helped them to grow, has grown divisions that he's worked with. So he's seen it from many sides. So, I think we're in for a treat, and, we're going to really start at the beginning, and the beginning is really, your marketing plan, your analysis, and your understanding. So, but before we do that, I just want to take a minute for a quick commercial. Small Business Pro University produces this show as well as other programs. So it doesn't hurt to know what Small Business Pro University is. So we're just going to give you a quick 60-second introduction, and then I'll be back with John, and we're going to be talking small business and strategies for long-term growth. Do you own your business, or does it own you? Is your business growing, and are you making enough money? As a business owner, there are so many things you need to know to become more successful. Hello, my name is Andrew Frazier, the Business Growth Pro and CFO. I created the Small Business Pro University for you. Small Business Pro University has self-paced, dynamic, multimedia learning experiences created by more than 20 instructors who are business owners just like you. Small Business Pro University will empower you to become a masterpreneur by learning the secrets to creating a successful enterprise, to go from working in your business to working on your business. Take advantage of our strategic coaching program, or just simply choose the courses that you need. At www.sbprou.com, we will empower you to thrive and not just survive, and make more money in any business environment. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier. I'm here with John Webb, and we're talking small business. So, John, when we're thinking about strategy, what is the first thing that we have to consider when we're thinking about strategy?
Well, I would say you have to take stock of the environment around you and understand the landscape of things before you jump in. I mean, before you jump into a pool, it's good to know there's water in there, and how deep is the pool, right? And what are you trying to accomplish? So I think the circumstance we're in right now with COVID really brings this home, because it's forced people to probably be more agile, be more flexible. So what their game plan might have been before COVID is a little bit different today. And those that were able to endure and stay and survive, in some cases thrive from what's happened. I think it really speaks to how do you adapt to the environment, even though it might change from what you thought it was when you first got in. I would say one of the best examples of that is if you look at the field of telemedicine. Again, I spent a lot of time in the venture world in the healthcare space, and digital health is one of those areas. And for the longest time, there were a lot of doctors, clients, whatever, that really they knew about telemedicine where you could do virtual visits, but had no interest in it, didn't feel like it was legitimate. That, if you wanted to get treated by a doctor, you had to go physically see that doctor. Well, COVID changed all that. And now that has changed. And so probably I would say in the future, 30, 40% of the time that you need to go to a doctor, you can do it virtually. And that was proven by COVID. So I would say take stock of the environment, understand what you're getting into and the obstacles you may face. And if it's still a green light for you, then take flight.
All right. So, understanding the environment and, really planning and analysis is more important than ever. And they always say failing to plan is planning to fail. And it helps you avoid missteps, which is key. So, one thing about, understanding the current environment is key. But now, as an entrepreneur, how should you, look at opportunities, and what is it that, you should be trying to find or figure out as an entrepreneur?
Okay. So I believe an entrepreneur is a special breed, quite frankly. I mean, many years ago, most people couldn't even spell the word. Now it's more commonplace, but sometimes I don't think it sounds sexy to be, but it's harder to do. I like to say to people, because it's not easy. I always tell people the dream is free, but hustle is sold separately. So to me, the special ingredient of an entrepreneur is hustle, the ability to hustle, to persevere, to do whatever it takes to get things done. Entrepreneur, if you want easy street, being an entrepreneur is not it. It's hard work. You usually got to be chief cook and bottle washer at first to get things started before you build a team. Anything that comes up, it's usually coming out of your pocket. You're working day and night. There's a lot that goes in it. Now, I'm not saying all this to dissuade people, but I'm saying this is what people have to embrace if they want to be an entrepreneur. And probably the people listening on this podcast today have already made that decision, and that's great. So I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but sometimes it takes someone else to show you that. I mean, that hustle is really a special ingredient, and you got to have it, or I don't think you'll make it.
Okay. No, definitely. I've seen it myself, working with hundreds of business owners. You really see that the successful ones, wake up every day ready to go and put their full energy into it. And, that's what it takes. So definitely being an entrepreneur, understanding it, how it works. But, really the first thing that you need to do to have a business is really have an idea or a concept. Mm-hmm. So, how do you know if something's a good idea, and what do you do with your idea once you have it?
Sure. Well, I mean, people come up with ideas all the time. I'll sit on a plane, and the minute people know that I do anything in the venture world, they either have an idea, a cousin has an idea, their mother has an idea. It's all great. But I always tell people there's a big difference between an idea and an opportunity. And how you separate the two is when you look at an opportunity, there's certain things that need to be there. So for one, it needs to fulfill a need or want. If it's just something you like, which is the mistake that some people make. People say, well, I decided to make an apple pie with, bananas and raisins in it. Well, that's great. But how many people want that? Is it just you and your family, or is there really a market for it? So you have to really put yourself on the other side and say, do people really want this? Is this something they would need? Am I fulfilling something for them? Another thing, and this one's important, depending upon what you're in. If you're in a kind of a lifestyle business, not so much so, but if you're creating something new, you have to decide, is this idea or dream that I have, can it be executed at this point in time? Can it be built even? And I think of that because that takes me back to my space shuttle days. When we were starting to build the shuttle, we came to the realization that the temperature gradient necessary to power the shuttle would basically burn up any metal at that time. So that meant you could use the engine once, it would basically burn itself up. So we actually had a series of scientists and researchers put to the task to develop an alloy. And one particular guy that I ended up having the pleasure to work with, he created an alloy called Alloy Z. And Alloy Z was the breakthrough that could withstand the temperature gradient necessary to power a shuttle. So once we had that, it was a go to go ahead and build the engines. So long story made short, you need to, before you, especially if you come up with some very creative idea or something that hasn't been done before, you got to make sure that you have the wherewithal to achieve it and to get it done. Or, is it maybe now's not the right time? Maybe you need for some other technology to come into place to help you or enable you to do it later on. But it's good to understand what can and cannot be done. And then also, you got to make sure that there's value created. I feel like, that's the one real important piece of any business that you're in. Does it create value? Because if it does, people are willing to stroke that check, pay that cash to get something. But if it doesn't, if it's just nice to have or something they can pass on, they often will. And you'll be waiting a long time before that customer comes to the door. So, that's to me, you go through those ideas to try to vet what really is an opportunity. Because if you can't really monetize it, which is why you're in it, even though there's many altruistic reasons to do something, you really got to pay the bills. You got to keep the doors open. And that means you got to be able to monetize. And to be able to monetize means you got to create some value. You got to be able to do some of the things I just mentioned. You can't just have a gleam in your eye.
Okay. No, that's a good point. And there's nothing wrong with making money. Some business owners feel bad or don't have that as their primary objective. But that needs to be your primary objective, because that's what business is about. Making sure that what you're doing makes money. Now, what you do with the money and how you do it, those can be go towards whatever else. But if your business isn't making money, then really at the end of the day, what are you doing? So definitely something to keep in mind. I like what you talked about, idea versus opportunity. A lot of people, have things that they're interested in, but, definitely that's not. And even if it's an opportunity, if you can't implement it, then that's going to, make it unsuccessful as well. So there's a lot of things that go into having a successful small business. But one of the most important things in business and in life, to be successful, to be a leader, Leadership Live, reason we're doing this is because at the end of the day, as a business owner, your success is going to be, a lot of it's going to be based on how good of a leader you are. So the thing about being a leader is, there's something that you really need to know. I don't know if you guys out there are Matrix fans. John, you a fan of the Matrix movie?
I can't say that I am, Andrew.
Okay, well, I've probably seen it more than enough for both of us.
Okay.
But there's a point early in the first one where Neo's in the kitchen with the Oracle, mm-hmm. and she has him look at this sign, and it says "Temet Nos," and that means know thyself, because if the more you understand and know yourself, the more successful you're going to be at leading others and everything that you do. So, knowing yourself is key. What are key things that you should know about yourself?
Okay. Well, even though I'm not a Matrix fan, I do like movies. And one of my main men that I loved growing up was Clint Eastwood. And Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations. So I think it's always good to know what you are capable of and maybe what's not your strength, because then you can find other people to do that instead of you trying to do it and going alone and maybe not being successful at it.
Okay.
The other thing is, I think that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good one. I think we got you hung up for a sec, but there you go.
All right. So now that you can see me again. I would say, especially if you're going down the entrepreneurial track, not all entrepreneurs are made in the same likeness. And what I mean by that is there's different types of entrepreneurial tracks and why people get into being an entrepreneur. And you should understand that about yourself. So when you go in, because it also dictates the kind of business you will be in. So, for example, some people are thrown into it. You get laid off from your regular job, or you can't stand working for someone else. So now you decide, okay, I'm going to be on my own. And so out of necessity, I'm starting something, and so that's how people get into it. Some people, we'll call them, say, a do-gooder. They basically said, you know what, I'm really altruistic. I want to help the world. I want to do social impact, and I can't do it at this 9-to-5 job here. So I'm going to be involved in a nonprofit, and that's where my passion is, and that's where you belong, and that's where you can do something. Others, take my engineering roots. Some people break into entrepreneurship because they are an expert. So they've studied something like, for example, lasers. When we were building the shuttle, we actually had to pioneer our way with how to cut these materials that were new, that were super hard, that you really couldn't cut with traditional tools. And the answer was lasers. And those lasers allowed people to do other things with lasers. But now they can do it on your eye surgery or whatever. They're used for so many different things. But again, you got people who started that who were experts. All right. And so that's what a lot of the apps that are started today are made by programming experts, people who know that field of endeavor and help get into it. Some people, on the other hand, are more artistic. They're more liberal, and they're free thinking, and they're coming up with different things that maybe engineers wouldn't even think about. Okay, so you have that side of the spectrum. Then I'll call another entrepreneurial track, I'll say, is probably being an entrepreneur with training wheels, and that's being a franchise owner. Because now someone else has built the cookbook. You guys got to read the recipe and follow it the way it's supposed to be done and not screw it up, and you can probably be successful at it. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, because I've met a lot of people who've done quite well by having a series of franchises. But again, I would say they're a quasi-entrepreneur, but they didn't have to come up with all these things on their own. Someone else did it for them, and they just tie onto that. And then there's finally, some people that just like it as a lifestyle, quite frankly. If you go through New York City, there's many people who have their own business and they actually live above the business. And unfortunately, sometimes they can't even get away from the business because they got to be there unless they can find the right people to take care of it while they're gone. So there's a whole array of different things, but it has to do with what's your personal interests, what are you comfortable with, and then matching that with the type of endeavor that you want to do.
Okay. So, yeah. So, I mean, definitely that's a very important piece of it, is really understanding how you fit in, where you fit in, your strengths, weaknesses, and really using that as part of your business's value proposition and knowing where you need help. So, one thing that's difficult and a lot of people underestimate when they go into small business is small business is risky, not just on the business side, but on the personal side. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's important to really understand what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably one of the biggest inhibitors to why more people aren't in entrepreneurship or why people haven't started other businesses. Because when it comes down to it, as much as people don't like answering to somebody and going into the office, they do enjoy the security of a steady paycheck, that, the lights are coming on because the company's paying for it. They just got to show up and do their job. And there's a lot to be said for that. And in some cases, people are like, you know what, this is fine by me. I'll do my part, let them do their part. It's a nice partnership. Entrepreneurs tend to not want it to be that way. They want to call the shots. They want to do things. They want to make the decisions. But with that comes the responsibility of taking ownership if things don't go right. And so therefore, that risk and that risk tolerance is what kind of allows people to either take the plunge or stay home and just think about the ideas and watch Shark Tank and dream about what could be, but they're not going to be the one to go out there and stick their neck out. But if you do stick your neck out, there's so many great stories of people who have been successful One that comes to mind for me when I think about risk tolerance and how a guy made something for himself is a guy by the name of Hamdi Ulukaya. And some of you may know that name, but if you don't, he is the founder of Chobani Yogurt. And he came over from Turkey. He was in New York City. He was going to school. I think he was going to Stony Brook. And he went upstate, and Kraft had closed the plant. And he saw the ad in the paper, and he said, "Yeah, they're almost giving this away." He says it was a yogurt plant, and he didn't like yogurt in the U.S. He thought it was too runny. He was used to Greek yogurt. He said, "Well, maybe I could start up with some Greek yogurt here in the U.S." And he took every penny he had and got some from other people. And he took out a small business loan, SBA loan, and he bought this plant from Kraft. And he started Chobani. And he basically got the people who were there to buy into his vision, to stay with him, because they were like, well, we're going to be out of a job anyway. We might as well see if we can make this guy work it out. And the rest is history. And now he is, a billionaire. So, he took a risk, took everything he had, but he figured, why not? And I have something I think that people might want that they're not familiar with, to be in this type of yogurt. And off he went. So he was willing to take the risk. But other people would have seen that plant and would have said, just turn the page and go into something else, but not look at, taking my savings and throw it into a plant that another company had discarded. So risk is very important, and you got to have a certain amount of tolerance, or you can't play this game. I got you. You still there, Andrew?
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't know about that story of Chobani, but that's a great starting, because they really changed the yogurt game. So that's huge. So definitely, one thing that's important when you're a business owner is to be process oriented and think strategically. And one of the key things to be able to do that is really working with checklists and other types of systems to be able to run your business successfully and set up your business successfully. Can you talk about some of the key elements that you need for developing the strategy for your business?
Sure. I think checklist is a good word, because I think that just like if someone was getting ready to fly a plane, the pilots go through a checklist to make sure, everything's ready, all systems go. I think you should do the same thing when you're embarking on probably a life-altering decision to start a business or to continue a business. First and foremost on the checklist should be, what's your mission? What's your vision? Why are you doing it? Goes back to what we were talking about before, knowing yourself. And is this really your passion? Is this really something that you feel that you can, stand behind and get others to buy into? And in some cases, you can see things that others can't see, and that could be proved great. Steve Jobs was great at that, right, with the iPhone. Second thing would be, don't try to boil the ocean. Meaning, you can start small. Come up with one version of a product. Don't try to create a whole array. Or I worked with a company that was coming up with a snack food. But they wanted to do like 20 different flavors and, different size bags. And I said, look, why don't we start out with 1 or 2 flavors, see if the dogs will eat it. Then we can expand and be like Baskin and Robbins and go and have all kinds of sizes and other kind of things. But let's keep it simple. We had 2 sizes, 2 flavors, and that's how we got it started. The other thing we talked about a little bit before is, do you have the passion? Do you have the perseverance to make it go? Because people look to you. When the adversity hits, they're going to look at you. And if you falter, they're out. So you got to know that you can stay strong no matter what you're facing to push through to get this thing done. The other thing I think, and this is an important one, I think, because there's many similar businesses, you have to find a way to differentiate yourself. Why is someone going to buy your whatever it is when there are 10 others on the shelf? And you got to figure out why and what value does that create, or what distinction does it have that makes it be your secret sauce that you can get them to buy you versus someone else. And it can't usually just be price, because price, that's a losing proposition. If they're only buying you on price, then the next person who offers it for a nickel less is going to win. So you have to have something else that says, no, I want you and you're worth whatever you're charging for it. Then you got to test it out. You got to pilot things. I think when you go to the marketplace, because sometimes until we actually go out there with an idea, we really don't understand some of the pitfalls we might encounter. So there's some things we haven't thought about because we've never been down this road before. And then you start to find out where the potholes are, and you find out, okay, how do we avoid them? How to repair what I did to do it differently, or how I take a different road that doesn't have these potholes. So I think you always have to be, about how do you test what's out there in the marketplace, and how do you react to it? And when you're talking about marketplace, you're also talking about competition. And we all like to think that we have the best product, the best service, but so does the competition. And so at some point, someone's going to be proven right and someone's going to be proven wrong. And you want to be proven right. So therefore, you need to do your homework. So if you understand the competition, again, this goes back into, okay, how am I going to differentiate myself so that I'm actually playing to my strength, not their strength? And if there's something that they do well that I can only match or I can't even match, then maybe I got to put my chips somewhere else where I can be better and I can win in that area. So that, and then I think the final thing is, you have to have your financial situation straight, meaning, can you get the right funding? Do you have enough cash flow? Do you manage it accordingly so that you can keep going to the next quarter, to the next quarter, to the next quarter? Because a lot of companies fail, and it usually has to do with running out of money, misappropriating the money, or not being able to raise the money. And so your idea comes dead in the water. So I would say if you go through that checklist and all systems would go, then you're ready to rock and roll.
Great. No, that makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, we've been covering a lot of great stuff there, John. Appreciate you sharing it. It's, a lot of things to really take into account, but being organized, having your checklist, and really making sure of, really that you understand the competition and that you are able to differentiate yourself successfully. So we've got some, time flies, but we still got some time left, which is good. But, one thing I just wanted to put on the table and just let people know is, I mentioned earlier that John was the speaker at the Power Breakfast events that we've done. And, over the past 10 years, we've done Power Breakfast events in Northern New Jersey, actually did one in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as well. And we've had over 1,000 attendees, and, it's resulted in, millions of dollars in business opportunity for attendees, as well as millions of dollars in financing. So we're actually bringing the Power Breakfast back live. So hopefully if you're in the area, October 29th, Friday, we're going to have the Power Breakfast again, new location at the Park Avenue Club in Florham Park, and really looking forward to it. Our featured guest speaker is going to be Dale Caldwell. He's the executive director and professor in charge of the Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Fairleigh Dickinson University. And, if you haven't been to a Power Breakfast, it's not something that you would fully have an appreciation for. So, we focus on supercharging your day, helping you with best practices, enjoy great networking, and gaining useful knowledge. And here's a quick video just to give you a feel for what it is. And, if you're available, we invite you to come out and join us on the 29th.
My name is Andrew Frazier from A&J Management. One of the things we're here to do is supercharge your day. What we do as part of our business, as an outgrowth of our business, is we have a series of brain trust initiatives that we're continuing to build on. And really through the brain trust initiatives, what we're doing is we're bringing a higher level of intellectual capital to bear. So we're bringing in resources, experts, expertise from across the country to share best practices and connect with business owners, entrepreneurs, organizational leaders to help you be more effective in what you do.
What I'm learning from Power Breakfast that sets it apart from other networking opportunities is how my local activities integrate and are part of the larger business community.
It brings together people of all industries who can share all different levels of expertise and can educate each other on different changing nature and evolving regulatory legal landscape, as well as all facets of all industries that they might not otherwise be privy to.
The Power Breakfast is so important for the entrepreneurial community because it gives the various business people who come together an opportunity to interact, discover what it is they can do to help each other, and also do some business.
So, welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. We're here with John Webb and really talking about strategies for achieving long-term growth. We've covered quite a few things in terms of, understanding the environment. We talked about what it means and what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Not that an idea is great, but it's not enough. Knowing yourself, being to be able to lead, you've got to be able to lead yourself first. Dealing with risk because entrepreneurship is risky, and being systematic and using checklists and processes and procedures so that you're able to, effectively deliver and execute on what you're doing. So, we've talked about all these things. We've got a few other things to cover. And one thing that many people find is, as an entrepreneur, it can be lonely. One of the Power Breakfast speakers we had, Michael Dermer, his book is called The Lonely Entrepreneur. And, definitely people can, can appreciate that and understand that. So, John, how do you, how can entrepreneurs and business owners deal with that effectively? And, what are ways to be successful and move your business forward, even if it's just you starting out?
So now I'm going to show my age because when I was growing up, I liked this rock and roll group called Three Dog Night. And for those of you who remember Three Dog Night, they had a song called One is the Loneliest Number. And it was a hit song. And I think that song is apropos to what we're talking about right now, because there's no need for you to be a superhero just because you're an entrepreneur, meaning you don't have to do it all. And unfortunately, we tend to either want to do it all or we can't trust enough to let other people do things for us. And it's better to do things as a team. You can get more accomplished. You bring on other perspectives. Also, you get people who can sometimes challenge each other, which gets you to make the right decisions, right? Because you vet things out as opposed to everybody have you. If it's just you have an idea, you go with it. You do what you want to do, but that doesn't make it right. So I think once you have the idea and you figure out it is a good opportunity, it is good to kind of put together what we'll call a minimal viable team, meaning you don't have to get a full-blown team, but you at least get 2 or 3 key positions that augment what your strengths are to get this thing done. Then at the same time, and if you saw in the Power Breakfast, it mentioned the word brain trust. That brain trust is important. That brain trust is usually some group of advisors, some board, somebody else who stands outside looking in, but has knowledge of maybe that industry, of what you're trying to accomplish, that can guide you and advise you, even though they're not actually part of running the company. So if you don't have a board or if you don't have a group of advisors, you need to get one because they're invaluable. And that's why corporations pay board members big money to have other CEOs kind of look at them through a different lens and tell them, what they could be doing or the opportunities they may have missed. So again, don't go it alone. I mean, it's your idea. You're still running the show, but it's good to have a team around you that can help you get there and help you do things that maybe you couldn't do on your own.
That's a good point. Building a team around you, even if they're, volunteers at first. But one thing you do have to be careful of as an entrepreneur is a lot of people don't understand what entrepreneurship is and why you would even want to be an entrepreneur. So, definitely you need to find people who are supportive and encouraging towards what you're doing. But they're out there. So, but definitely you don't want to go it alone. You've got a lot of resources, so many resources out there for entrepreneurs and business owners that go unused. Anywhere you're located, there's SCORE, which is free service of retired executives that can help you with your business and business planning. You've got the small business development centers, SBDC. They're usually affiliated with a university campus. They do training, they do free business counseling, and your tax dollars pay for it. So as a business owner, you should take advantage of that. That's an opportunity. And then there's other organizations, chambers of commerce. There's so many things that you can get involved in that can help you with your business and help you connect with others, because the key to success in business is the relationships that you develop. So now that we have our idea or product, we want to figure out what about branding? What is branding, and how does it work, and why should we do it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with anything else, identity is important. And that's what branding is about. What kind of identity you're trying to create. Because that image, that's what carries you through. People usually see your image, your name, before they see you. And if it doesn't intrigue them, then they dismiss it. Or if it doesn't resonate with them, then they move it on. So to me, I find a lot of entrepreneurs don't put a lot of stock in branding. They don't think about the name. Those things are very, very important. And so I think that you, just as much as you put time into the product and to hiring people and where you're going to do business, you should think about the name, because that's with you all the time. That's what you are. I mean, it becomes a version of you. So think carefully, because you're going to be carrying with it for a long time. I always tell people, it's great to get steak, but if it's sizzling, that's what sells the steak. And that's why, have a company like Ruth Chris, which is a great steakhouse. If you notice, when they bring it out, they put the hot butter on there, so it's still sizzling. And that's helping sell that steak, even though that steak might taste the same as it is down the street at Morton's. But that presentation, it means something. And again, it's also a way to differentiate yourself. So I think you need to think about branding, thinking about, some people say, I need a logo. You don't need a logo. I mean, that's up to you to decide. But that's another thing to ask your brand. And also, do you need a tagline that goes with, that reinforces what the name is? So these are all different things. But I can tell you, some of the most successful companies in this world are iconic because of branding. I mean, if I show you the golden arches, you know who that is, right? If I show you that swoosh on a shirt, you know who that is, right? And those companies make a lot of money from that brand.
So no, definitely that branding's key. But I guess we also have to keep in mind that they spend an awful lot of money on their brand and making it a household name. And, sometimes a small business, you have much more limited funds. So, I always tell people I'm working with, if you want to be successful in small business, you got to be really cheap or frugal. So
that doesn't mean that you can't spend a little bit of money on branding. And I know you're not going to spend money like McDonald's or Nike, but right. I'll give you a good example. I had a buddy of mine. He owned a farm, and he was selling cabbage, and cabbage is a commodity. But I told him, you know what? How about you put your cabbage in a blue crate? Everybody else, cabbage is green, but everybody thinks of green. But put yours in a blue crate. Everybody else is just selling a plain wood box. And guess what? People started to identify with that. They could see a difference. So it can be a small thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But I would say, don't forget about branding. It can be important, even the name itself. So I'll leave it at that. You don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars advertising. But you got a good name, it'll carry you a long way.
Right. And that's a big piece of your differentiation strategy. So, there's definitely a lot of things you can do. Just like Kimmy says, you can invest in branding without spending a whole bunch of money. You just got to be creative. And as a small business owner anyways, you got to be creative, you got to be flexible, and, you got to be proactive. And that's what you got to do if you're going to be able to compete effectively, especially against larger companies. So thanks, Kimmy, for your comment, and definitely as we're going, please feel free to, give comments. Feel free to ask questions, and we'll try to cover them as well. So definitely, great to have so many people on and joining in and participating. So, John, we've got, let's see. We talked about branding. One thing I always look at and help a lot of people is help them get financing, because that's one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs and business owners. What is your approach to financing for small businesses? And also talk a little bit about you've spent time in the venture capital space. What is that like? Because a lot of people don't really understand that and how it works.
Okay. All right. There's a lot there, but I think we saved the best for last, because nothing goes if you don't have the funds to make it happen. So first thing, I'll kind of give you the pecking order, because I think you start out with your own assets. People usually don't want to invest in something that you weren't willing to invest in yourself. So whether it's your sweat equity, you crack into your own piggy bank, whatever it takes, you got to show that you believe in enough that you're putting some of your money forward. Then next you go to friends and family. They're the next rung up, and they believe in you and they want to help out, and they chip in, and you decide what they get for that, but they help you get to the next level. Then you can do things like go to Small Business Administration and either take out a loan, or you go to banks, and then some people go the government route where they get grants. So there's other ways to get funding depending upon what you're doing, and does it fit the thesis of what they're trying to accomplish, and can you prove to them that while they're helping you start your business, that it's also helping them, because they get the knowledge that you got from doing what it is you started, that they can feed back and help them on the research side. Then there's crowdfunding. And crowdfunding, I think it's okay, but it's not a way to raise a lot of money, but it's a way to kind of, again, get jump started. And then usually you offer something of value for them, free book, whatever they get for participating to get you started. And then you start to get into the next level, where now you're starting to be with accelerators or incubators, where they actually will pay you to be part of their thing. And they're also supplying you with support, which also saves you money until you can maybe fly on your own. And then we have what's called an angel investor. When you talk about flying, the angels have wings, and these angels have usually made business. They usually focus on a particular industry, because that's where they made their money. So they feel they know something about it, and they aren't, not afraid to jump in again and help others do the same. So angel investors are very instrumental, especially when you're just getting started, because it could be a benefactor who wants to help out and will give you generous terms to get you started. Then once you get past the angel phase, now we're talking venture capital. Now we're talking private equity, and that's for more sophisticated offerings. That means you really got to have proven something. They're usually not giving it to someone right out the gate. They usually have to see a little bit of revenue. They have to see that this business does have an opportunity. Then the venture capital will put it in. But now we're talking about asking for a lot more money. And then the end road after that is the private equity firms, and those are the ones where you're now big game hunting. You're going at they're playing the game to win big sums of money, which means they're willing to give big sums of money. And you can touch all these steps along the way, but you can't start out by saying, well, I'm just going straight to private equity. That's the other thing is, before you go approach any of these different groups for money, understand that what you have is at what they're looking for. So for example, if you go to certain banks, they loan for hotels, right? So don't go to them saying, hey, I got a candy store and I want money for it, because that's not what they do. They invest in hotels. So do your research, know that who you're going to, that's what they fund, and you're in the right category to get that funding. So you're not wasting their time and you're not wasting your time.
Yeah, definitely not a good idea to waste people's time, especially your own. So, one of the things that I developed and laid out in my book, and actually when I'm working with people, it's called Pray for Financing. So if you're going to go look for financing, you really need to pray. Definitely doesn't hurt to get on your knees and pray, but also P for prepare yourself in your business. Research, types of fundings and the requirements around them and different funders. Assemble your documents, because many people don't get financing just because they never even put everything together to complete their application. And then yield. Why is for yield? Because, once you've done what you can do, there's not much more you can do. So you got to let them do their job. And, if they request information or whatever, you have to yield to what they need, so that finally, if everything comes together, you're going to get your financing. I'm excited. One of my clients last week closed on a new building, multi-million-dollar SBA loan successfully. So, businesses can get financing, but you can't get it until you're prepared. And it takes time to prepare, and it takes time to get it. So, definitely that's key. So John, you talked about different financing, but I think, one thing a lot of people don't really get their arms around is, when you're talking venture capital, okay, what type of business do you have to be? Like, generally, you have to be a very high growth business. And what does that do? How does that change the way your business runs if you have venture capital investments within your business?
So they do look for high growth, but I mean, there's a lot of industries that they fund. But with their money, there are strings attached, meaning usually they put someone on your board. So they're not trusting you to run around with their money without some supervision. So there's someone on the board. And also, they usually demand an equity stake. So there's a certain amount of business that you have to give, a certain amount of your equity that you have to give up for that cash. And if it's worth it, then you need it. I mean, especially if the sums of money that you're looking for, they may be the only game in town to get it. So that's why, go angel first, because angels are not as, let's put it this way, as mercenary as venture capital or private equity can be, because they're in it for business. They're in it to make money. They might believe in what you're trying to do, but at the end of the day, they got to figure, like, I got to get a multiple. I'm not giving you $1 to make $2. I'm giving you $1 to make $5 or $10. And so with that, they're hard driving, and they're going to push you to really do what you need to do to get them that return. So that there's pressure when it comes to that. But in some cases, it's well worth it because they've done quite well. I mean, some of the major companies you see right now, whether it's Uber or anybody else, they got venture capital money. And look at them today. So it's not a bad thing. It's just that you got to be able to take what goes with it. If they take that source of funds, if you're not ready for it though, then you got to go somewhere else. If someone's going to be a little bit more passive and give you a little bit more time to get that return, and no one's going to be looking over your shoulder all the time. Andrew must be out there looking for his money.
Right. Definitely great that, you shared a little bit more detail, because a lot of people may be out there looking for private equity and venture capital, but really not understanding what it's all about. So definitely that's key. Looking at the time, it's amazing how fast time flies, because it's, we're just about at the hour. But this has been tremendous. Definitely, before we close out, I just want you to think about, couple of key things, like at the Power Breakfast, what can people take away from what we talked about today and implement immediately? So, take a minute to think about that and what you'd like to share. And what I'm going to do is show a quick video. I finished my second book, and it's called the Entrepreneurial Playbook. So this will just tell you a little bit about what it is, and then we'll come back to John, and he'll share some things that you can take away from today and implement to help you be more successful starting tomorrow or even tonight. So we'll be right back. This is my most recent. It's not even available yet.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
The Entrepreneurial Playbook.
Okay.
And really, we talked about is there's 5 steps to growing your business.
Yeah.
And,
really laying out what those steps are, but not only what the steps are, how do you transition through them? And each stage, you have certain things, there's a certain challenge that you have to overcome.
Right.
There's a certain goal you have to achieve.
Right.
There's a certain role you have as a business owner.
Right.
There's a certain structure that you need to have within your business to support that role and move into the next role. So each step, I lay out what those things are.
Wonderful.
Because each one of those has a key skill that you have to have as the business owner. You have to evolve and continually learn, or you're going to get stuck. You can only go as far as you're prepared to take it.
Okay, we're here back with John Webb at Leadership Live at 8:05. We're talking about strategies for achieving long-term growth. We've covered a lot of valuable information, and just want to have John just share a couple things that we should definitely take into account and that we can use to implement immediately within our business and what we're doing.
Okay, so we did cover a lot of ground. I would say the 3 or 4 things that I usually express no matter what I'm talking about when it comes to entrepreneurship is, first, you got to start with the passion. You got to have it. And if you have it, that is the fuel that gives you the energy to move forward. And, some people will check themselves at the door because of the risk. But to me, you got to have that risk tolerance as well. But if you have the passion and you believe in yourself, then don't worry about the risk. Things will work out. And you don't have to totally quit your job. You can do stuff on the side to test it out. There's many different things you can do to get to where you want to be. So you can start slow and then work your way. It isn't an all or nothing game. And quite frankly, it's invigorating to take the risk and can give you a sense of freedom, and you're controlling your own destiny. So there's a lot of benefits to it. So, you got to be able to put the fear aside, move forward. Then you also have to have the perseverance, because you're going to encounter some obstacles that you have to deal with, but that's okay. That's part of what this is all about. And I would say, and we never said this word so far, but it's something that needs to be there, is you have some fun along the way. We talked about a lot of things you got to do, and it sounds like a lot of work, which it is. This is arduous stuff. However, it's rewarding, it's exhilarating, and you got to have some fun. And if you do that, then you can be like Andrew, start all these different businesses. The man's writing books, he's starting the universities, doing all this. Hey, we should all be like him when we grow up. But take those things to heart, and I think you'll be fine. And I appreciate the time to share what I know about entrepreneurship with you today.
Okay. Thank you, John. This has been great. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're doing all kinds of great stuff, and you have long days with what you do. But definitely thank you for joining me. Look forward to having you back again, and look forward to when we can go to breakfast again in New York once it's
That's right. That's right. We got to get abused again sometime. Sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes you miss those types of relationships. They're abusive. So this is great. So thanks again. Hang in there for a minute, and let me just close out. But
Bye, everybody.
Definitely thanks, John. And so Leadership Live at 8:05. Each week we have a tremendous guest who just really brings their own perspective on business and leadership that can be valuable for you. It's all about expanding your perspective, understanding what other leaders have done and are doing, and figuring out really what works for you. At the end of the day, when you're doing business, it's about really just being able to lead successfully, being able to continually learn, continue to develop, continually evolving. So thanks for your comment, John, about John. So excellent. So next week we've got our guest is Steve Irwin. Excited to have him. He's a Pittsburgher. And we've got Steve Irwin. We're going to talk about leadership in business and government. He's an attorney. He's been an attorney at Lee Tishman for 20 years, and he's a partner there as well. But not only that, currently he's a candidate for the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania for 2022. So, he's bridged the gap throughout his career between business and government, and actually now even looking to go into government in a bigger way. So definitely looking forward to having Steve as a guest on the show. I think that, being able to transition and understanding, the differences in leadership between business and government, and understanding that it's important to, both are important to each other. It's hard to be a business person without really interacting with the government, and, government is very involved in business. So look forward to really talking to him and learning some things from him as well. So, thank you for hanging out once again for Leadership Live at 8:05. And, really what we look at is, at the end of the day, the more you know, the faster you grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.